The heavy, perfumed air of the Moretti Gala, a place where empires are traded over crystal flutes, shattered with the sudden, sharp crack of a slap. It wasn't a calculated move or a subtle warning. It was Bianca D'Amato, the reigning princess of the underworld, striking a waitress named Clara Hayes for the crime of disrespect. The room went tomb quiet. The billionaires held their breath. The security team froze. But what happened in the next 60 seconds would leave the city's most dangerous men speechless. Lucian Moretti, a man so controlled they called him the Silence, watched as his $5,000 bottle of vintage Bordeaux remained unpoured. For the first time in a decade, his legendary composure slipped. He wasn't looking at his fiancée's rage. He was looking at the 26-year-old waitress who didn't cry, didn't flinch, and didn't beg. Instead, Clara reached out with a steady hand and began to meticulously dab a smudge of sauce off Bianca's silk shoulder, treating the most dangerous woman in New York like a petulant child. In that moment, Lucian realized the truth. The real predator wasn't the woman with the title, but the woman with nothing left to lose. You think you know how this ends? You haven't seen what Clara Hayes is hiding. Welcome, Helen Romance Library lovers. If stories of forbidden love and dangerous men make your heart race, please support me by subscribing. Help me reach 1,000 subscribers so I can bring you more addictive tales that will leave you breathless. Your support means the world to me. Now, let's dive into the story. The crystal hit the marble floor like a gunshot, and Lucian Moretti watched as a lifetime of careful control shattered along with it. Wine spread across the pristine white tablecloth like a bloodstain, creeping toward Bianca's designer dress with the inevitability of fate. She shrieked, that particular sound she made when the world failed to arrange itself according to her specifications, and Lucian felt nothing. Not irritation. Not concerned. Nothing but the hollow echo of a man who had been playing a role so long he'd forgotten his own face. But then the waitress moved. She moved like water finding its path, swift and sure, her hands already pressing cloth napkins to the spreading crimson. No panic. No trembling apologies. Just efficiency born of someone who had cleaned up far worse messes than spilled Bordeaux. I'm so sorry, ma'am. Please allow me. Get away from me. Bianca recoiled as though the girl carried plague. Do you have any idea what this dress costs? Do you have any concept of what you've done? Lucian watched the waitress's face. Clara. He'd seen her name tag earlier and had noticed her the moment she'd approached their table with that particular combination of wariness and pride that mark survivors. Now her cheeks flushed with humiliation, but her eyes remained steady. Dark eyes. Storm cloud eyes that held lightning just beneath the surface. She was absorbing Bianca's venom like a sponge, and something about that silent endurance made Lucian's chest constrict in a way he hadn't felt in years. The entire evening is ruined, Bianca continued, her voice carrying across the restaurant with theatrical precision. I want her fired. Tonight. I want. Bianca. Lucian's voice cut through her tirade like a blade through silk. Quiet. Final. His fiancée turned to him, painted lips already curving into a victorious smile. She expected him to summon the manager, to make demands, to perform the ritual destruction of a service worker, which she considered her divine right. Instead, Lucian reached for his napkin and dabbed at the wine on Clara's sleeve. Wine that had splashed onto her while she frantically tried to minimize the damage. Are you all right? He asked. The question hung in the air like something revolutionary. Clara's eyes met his, and in that fraction of a second, Lucian saw recognition. Not of his name or his reputation, though she surely knew both, but of something else. Something that had nothing to do with power or money or the Byzantine politics of the city's underworld. She saw him. The real him. The man beneath the legend. I'm fine, sir. Thank you. 3 words. They shouldn't have meant anything. But they did. Lucian. Bianca's voice had shifted from theatrical to dangerous. What are you doing? He stood, adjusting his cufflinks with deliberate precision. Around them, the restaurant had grown silent. Everyone was watching. The other diners, the staff, and the bodyguards stationed at discreet distances. Let them watch. He was tired of performing for an audience. I'm leaving, Bianca. Alone. You can't be serious. Over a clumsy waitress? Over spilled wine. Lucian looked at his fiancée, really looked at her, and wondered how he'd spent 3 years seeing only what she wanted him to see. The perfect bone structure. The society pedigree. The strategic value of uniting two powerful families through marriage. He'd been so focused on the chess game that he'd forgotten he was dealing with living pieces. This isn't about the wine, he said. This is about the fact that in 3 years, I've never once seen you treat anyone below you as human. And I've been too busy to care. Below me. Bianca laughed. High and brittle. Lucian, darling, everyone is below us. That's the point. No. He straightened his jacket. That's the tragedy. He turned to Clara, who stood frozen with her wine-stained napkins, watching the dissolution of a Moretti engagement like a shipwreck survivor witnessing another vessel sink. Come to my office in 1 hour, he said. The address is on my card. He pressed his business card into her palm, feeling the roughness of her work-worn hands against his fingers. She stared at him as though he'd handed her a live grenade. Perhaps he had. The office occupied the top floor of a building that pretended to be a legitimate import-export business. Clara had walked the 12 blocks from the restaurant, using the time to convince herself she was making a rational decision. She wasn't. The elevator required a keycard, which the stone-faced man in the lobby provided after checking her ID against a list. She rode up in silence, her reflection fragmenting in the mirrored walls, a tired woman in a wine-stained uniform, ascending toward something she didn't understand. The doors opened onto controlled opulence. Dark wood. Leather furniture. The scent of old money and older secrets. Lucian Moretti stood at the window, silhouetted against the city lights. Without his fiancée's presence poisoning the air, Clara could finally look at him clearly. He was younger than she'd assumed, mid-30s, maybe, with the kind of face that artists would have immortalized in marble during the Renaissance. Sharp angles, deeper shadows, eyes that had seen too much and forgotten how to look away. You came, he said without turning. I almost didn't. But you did. Why? Clara considered lying. Considered citing curiosity or boredom or the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't what it looked like. Instead, she told the truth. Because I have nothing left to lose. Lucian turned then, studying her with an intensity that made her feel simultaneously exposed and seen. Everyone has something to lose, Clara. The question is whether you know what it is. He gestured to a chair across from his desk. She sat, acutely aware of the power imbalance. Him in his custom suit, her in her uniform with its spreading wine stain like a scarlet letter. I have a proposition, he said, settling into his own chair. One that will pay you $300,000 for a single night's work. The number landed between them like a physical thing. Clara felt her heart stutter, skip, and resume at triple speed. What kind of work? Courier work. You'll carry a briefcase from point A to point B. That's all. That's never all. The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. No, it isn't. He leaned forward, shadows carving deeper lines into his face. The briefcase contains information that several people want very badly. Some will pay for it. Others will kill for it. Your job is to ensure it reaches its destination intact. And if I fail, then we never had this conversation, and you never existed. Clara should have stood. Should have walked out. Should have returned to her crumbling apartment and her mounting debts and the slow suffocation of a life going nowhere. Instead, she asked, "Why me?" Lucian's eyes held hers, and for a moment the mask slipped. "Because everyone in my world is connected to someone. Everyone has loyalties, allegiances, and weaknesses that can be exploited. But you." He shook his head slowly. "You're invisible. No family in the business. No ties to any faction. You're a ghost, Clara. And ghosts can go places the living cannot. And if I say no, then you walk out that door, return to your life, and we pretend this never happened. Would you actually let me walk away?" The question surprised him. She saw it in the slight widening of his eyes and the brief hesitation before he answered. "Yes," he said finally. "I would." And somehow, impossibly, she believed him. Clara thought about the eviction notice taped to her door. The hospital bills are piling up like autumn leaves. Her mother's fragile body, growing frailier by the day in a facility that would become a state ward the moment Clara missed another payment. 300,000, she said. For one night. For one night. But understand, once you agree, there's no backing out. This is blood money, Clara. A blood pact. She met his eyes and saw something that looked almost like hope beneath the ruthlessness, as though he was waiting for her to prove that people could still choose courage over comfort. "When do I start?" The apartment building leaned against its neighbors like a drunk against a lamppost. 3 stories of crumbling brick and broken promises in a neighborhood that city planners had forgotten decades ago. Clara climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, her footsteps echoing in the graffiti-tagged stairwell. The elevator hadn't worked since before she moved in. Neither had the heat most days, nor the water pressure, nor any of the half-dozen things her landlord promised to fix with the same sincerity he promised not to raise the rent. She unlocked her door and stepped into the space that was supposed to be a home. 1,200 square feet of water-stained ceiling and warped floorboards. A kitchen that doubled as a living room. A bedroom barely large enough for the mattress she'd salvaged from a curb. And everywhere, on the table, the counter, spilling from the mail slot like paper vomit, bills. Clara gathered them like gathering fallen soldiers. Electric. Gas. The phone company. The credit card she'd maxed out covered her mother's first round of treatments. The second credit card was maxed out for the same reason. The collection agencies were circling like vultures who'd smelled something dying. At the bottom of the pile, the pink envelope. She didn't need to open it. The color told her everything. The facility's gentle way of announcing that gentleness was about to end. "Dear Miss Reyes, we regret to inform you that your payment is 60 days past due. While we understand the difficulty of your situation, we must inform you that continued residency for your mother is contingent upon." Clara crumpled the letter and pressed her fist against her mouth to keep from screaming. Her mother. Elena Reyes, who had worked 2 jobs for 20 years to keep Clara fed, clothed, and educated. Who had sacrificed everything, every comfort, every luxury, every personal dream, so that her daughter could have a better life than her own. And now that daughter was standing in a cold apartment, contemplating blood money from a crime lord, because that better life had turned out to be just another kind of prison. Clara walked to the window and stared out at the fire escape, at the building across the alley where lights flickered in other small apartments filled with other desperate lives. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Tomorrow night. 9 p.m. Don't be late." She didn't need to ask who it was from. For a long moment, Clara stood in the darkness, weighing her options on a scale that had only one side. She could say no. She could walk away. She could be noble and pure and watch her mother die in some state-run facility that smelled of disinfectant and defeat. Or she could become what she needed to become. She texted back a single word. "Ready." Then she lay down on her mattress, stared at the water stains on the ceiling, and tried to convince herself that she still recognized the woman she was becoming. Rain slicked the alley behind Castellano's, turning the cobblestones into mirrors that reflected nothing but darkness. Bianca Marchetti stood beneath the awning of a loading dock, watching her cigarette smoke spiral upward into the mist. She hated waiting. She hated rain. And she hated, with a passion that burned in her bones like fever, the look on Lucian's face when he touched that waitress's sleeve. "You're late," she said when the shadow detached from the darkness and became a man. Vincent Russo smiled at a snake sizing up a mouse. "I had to make sure you weren't followed, Cara. Your fiancé's men are everywhere these days." Former fiancé. Russo's eyebrows rose. "Already? That was fast. He dismissed me. In public. Over a serving girl." The words came out sharp and brittle, carrying 3 years of rage distilled into seconds. "I want her destroyed. The waitress." Russo chuckled. "That's beneath you, Bianca. Surely. You don't understand." Bianca turned to face him, and whatever he saw in her expression made his smile falter. Lucian looked at her like she was human, like she mattered. "In 3 years, he never looked at me that way. Not once." Russo's expression shifted, the amusement giving way to calculation. "And what are you offering in exchange for this destruction?" Bianca reached into her coat and withdrew a small flash drive. "Everything. Shipping schedules. Safehouse locations. The names of every cop and politician on Moretti's payroll." Russo stared at the drive as if it might bite him. "If he finds out, then he kills me. But slowly, over a lifetime of humiliation, he's killing me anyway." She pressed the drive into his palm. "I want the girl broken. Not dead, broken. I want her to know that she reached above her station and got burned. And I want Lucian to watch." Russo pocketed the drive, his smile returning with renewed warmth. "Consider it done. There's more." Bianca's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Tomorrow night, he's sending her on a run. Courier work, a briefcase that's supposed to go to the Marquez warehouse. The Valdez files." Russo's eyes widened. He's trusting something that valuable to a waitress? That's what makes her perfect to destroy. If she never arrives, if the briefcase goes missing. Bianca smiled, and it was a cold, beautiful thing. Lucian will think she betrayed him. He'll hunt her himself. And when he finds her, when he realizes what she's become, it will hurt him the way he hurt me. The rain intensified, drumming against the awning like impatient fingers. "I'll have men at the pier," Russo said. "She'll never even see them coming." Bianca turned and walked away, her heels clicking against wet stone. Behind her, Vincent Russo watched her go and wondered, not for the first time, why the most dangerous creatures in the city always wore the most beautiful masks. The penthouse had been converted into something that looked like a cross between a fashion showroom and a military armory. Racks of clothing lined one wall. Cases of equipment lined the other. And in the center of it all stood Clara, feeling like a mannequin waiting to be dressed. "Size 6, said the woman Lucian had introduced only as the tailor. She circled Clara with a measuring tape in hand. "Good bones. Bad posture. We'll fix the posture." For the next 3 hours, Clara was transformed. The tailor replaced her worn jeans and faded t-shirt with clothing that probably cost more than her monthly rent, a sleek black dress that moved like liquid shadow, a leather jacket lined with Kevlar that looked like fashion but felt like armor, and boots with hidden compartments. A stylist appeared, reshaping Clara's practical ponytail into something that suggested corporate power and vague threats. Makeup followed, subtle enough to look natural, dramatic enough to change the entire architecture of her face. When they were finished, Clara stood before a full-length mirror and stared at a stranger. "You clean up nice." Lucian's voice came from the doorway. He'd changed too, dark jeans, a casual blazer, and something almost human about the way he leaned against the doorframe. "I look like someone else," Clara said. "You look like who you could be." He crossed the room and stood beside her, both of them reflected in the glass. "That's the point. Tonight, you're not Clara Reyes, waitress. You're someone with power. Some people think twice about crossing." "Is that what you see? Power?" He met her eyes in the mirror. "I see potential. Same thing in this world." He handed her an earpiece, small enough to disappear inside her ear canal. "I'll be listening the entire time. Any trouble, you say the word, and my people will be there in minutes. And if minutes aren't fast enough?" Lucian reached into his jacket and withdrew something that made Clara's breath catch, a small handgun, matte black and deadly efficient. "This is a Glock 26. Point and shoot. The safety is here." He demonstrated. "I hope you never need to use it. But if you do." Clara took the gun. It was heavier than she expected. Heavier and colder and infinitely more real than any of this had seemed until this moment. "Last chance," Lucian said. "You can still walk away." Clara slid the gun into the jacket's interior pocket and felt its weight settle against her ribs. "Give me the briefcase." For a moment something flickered in his eyes. Pride, maybe. Or fear. Or some combination of both that didn't have a name. He handed her the briefcase. Black leather, silver clasps, combination lock. It was surprisingly light for something everyone seemed willing to kill for. "The address is programmed into the GPS app on this phone." He pressed a smartphone into her other hand. "You have 4 hours. Plenty of time if nothing goes wrong." "And if something goes wrong?" Lucian reached out and adjusted the collar of her jacket with surprising gentleness. "Then you improvise. That's why I chose you, Clara. Not because you're invisible. Because I saw the way you held yourself when Bianca was screaming at you. You didn't break. You didn't beg. You absorbed it and stayed standing." He stepped back. "That's rarer than you know." Clara looked at the briefcase in her hand, the gun against her ribs, and the stranger staring back from the mirror. "I'm ready," she said, and almost believed it. The city at midnight was a different animal from the city at noon. Darker, obviously. Quieter in some ways, louder in others. The daylight crowds had been replaced by shadows with intentions. Some harmless, some less so. Clara moved through the streets with the briefcase pressed against her hip, following the blue on her phone's GPS like a sailor following stars. The route Lucian had chosen avoided main streets, threading through alleys and side roads, and once through what appeared to be a private parking structure. Clara understood the logic. It's harder to follow someone through unpredictable terrain. But 3 blocks into the journey, she understood something else. She wasn't alone. The first shadow appeared on Merchant Street, a silhouette that ducked into a doorway just a beat too late to be invisible. Male from the shoulders. Wearing dark clothing. Moving with the purposeful casualness of someone who'd done this before. Clara kept walking. Kept her pace steady. Kept her hand near the pocket where the Glock waited like a sleeping predator. "Lucian," she murmured into the earpiece. "I'm being followed." Static. Then his voice, calm and controlled. "I see him. Gray jacket, Yankees cap. He's been on you since Lennox. Keep moving. Martinez is shadowing from the rooftop. He'll intercept if needed." Clara exhaled. Martinez. One of Lucian's people. Good. That meant. She stopped. Because there was another shadow. This one was behind her and to the left, moving parallel on a street she'd just passed. Different build. Different gait. Not the Yankees cap. Lucian. There are two. A pause. Longer than comfortable. I only see one. Clara's heart began to pound, a drumbeat of recognition that something had gone very, very wrong. Trust me. There are two. And they're coordinating. She could feel it now, the way the first shadow sped up when she slowed down, the way the second one adjusted position to maintain triangulation. These weren't random street criminals hoping to snatch a purse. These were professionals, herding her toward something. Can you get to the church on 5th? Lucian's voice was sharper now, the calm cracking. It's a safe zone. 3 minutes if you run. Clara looked at the GPS. 5th Street was to her left, which meant passing through the shadow zone of control. I've got a better idea. She turned right, toward the waterfront, toward the pier where she was supposed to make the handoff. If she could get there before they closed in, she'd have options. Boats. Warehouses. Places to hide, to fight, to do something other than run blindly into a trap. Clara, that's not the route. The route is compromised. She was running now, heels clicking against pavement, briefcase banging against her thigh. So we improvise. The pier materialized out of the fog like a scene from a nightmare. Rusted shipping containers, abandoned cranes, and the skeletal remains of boats that hadn't sailed in decades. Clara ducked behind a stack of wooden pallets, her breath coming hard and fast. The shadows had followed. Of course they had. She'd watched them converge as she approached the water, 3 of them now, the original 2 plus another who'd been waiting at the pier itself. Waiting for her. This wasn't a random tale. This was a planned ambush. Clara, talk to me. Lucian's voice crackled in her ear, frayed with static and something that might have been fear. I've got men en route, but they're 8 minutes out. You need to. I know what I need to do. She pressed herself against the cold metal of a container and assessed her situation with the strange clarity that comes when options narrow to a single point. 3 men. 1 gun. A briefcase worth dying for. The first shadow appeared around the corner of a warehouse. Gun raised. He was young, younger than Clara had expected, with the hard eyes of someone who'd made his peace with violence. Give us the case, he said. Walk away. Simple as that. Who sent you? Does it matter? Clara thought about it. Thought about the life she'd been living. The bills, the grinding poverty, the slow erosion of every dream she'd ever harbored. She thought about her mother in that sterile facility, wasting away 1 cell at a time. She thought about Lucian's face when he'd handed her the briefcase, the way he'd looked at her like she was more than what she'd become. Yes, she said. It matters. She drew the Glock. She'd never fired a gun before. Never even held one until tonight. But something in her body remembered movements she'd never learned. Stance, grip, and the way to line up the sights like pointing a finger at what you wanted to destroy. Last chance, the shadow said. There are 3 of us. 1 of you. Math doesn't lie. You're right. Clara smiled, a new smile, one she didn't recognize. The math is very clear. She shot the lamp above his head. The pier plunged into darkness. What followed was confusion and chaos and the pure animal terror of being hunted in the dark. Clara moved through it like water through cracks, using the layout she'd memorized from the GPS, navigating by the sound of footsteps and the smell of fear that she'd come to recognize as her own. When the 3rd shadow cornered her near the water's edge, she was ready. He lunged. She stepped aside. The briefcase connected with his temple with a sound like justice, and he dropped. The 2nd shadow came at her with a knife, amateur hour, bringing a blade to a gunfight, and she put a bullet through his shoulder without breaking stride. The 1st shadow, the one who'd asked about the case, found her waiting for him in the fog. Who sent you? She asked again. This time, with a gun pressed to his forehead, he answered. Russo. Vincent Russo. But the information came from, he swallowed. Bianca Marchetti. The boss's fiancée. Clara felt the name settle into her bones like a prophecy fulfilled. Former fiancé, she corrected and brought the gun down on his skull. The black cars arrived in a scream of tires and shouting men, but by the time Lucian reached the pier, the chaos was over. He found Clara sitting on a shipping container, legs dangling over the edge like a child on a swing set. The briefcase rested beside her. At her feet, 3 men lay in various states of unconsciousness, one bleeding from a shoulder wound, another sporting an impressive head trauma, and the third simply crumpled like a discarded marionette. Lucian stopped, stared, felt something shift in the tectonic plates of his understanding. You're late, Clara said. He was rarely at a loss for words. This was one of those times. What happened? They tried to take the briefcase. She shrugged. I objected. Lucian approached slowly, the way one might approach a wild animal that had just demonstrated unexpected lethality. He looked at the fallen men, looked at Clara, looked at the gun still clutched in her hand with comfortable familiarity. You did this. Alone. I had good motivation. She met his eyes. Also, you were right about the improvisation. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Around them, Lucian's men were securing the scene, binding the fallen shadows, calling for cleanup crews, and doing the grim work that kept empires running. But Lucian only had eyes for Clara. Bianca, she said finally. She sold you out. Your routes, your safehouses, everything. These men work for Vincent Russo. Whatever Lucian felt, betrayal, rage, the particular pain of realizing that 3 years had been nothing but an elaborate performance, he kept it buried beneath the surface. How do you know? I asked nicely. Clara gestured at the men with the gun. They were very cooperative. Lucian let out a breath that might have been a laugh in another life. I came to save you, he said. 8 minutes. I drove here in 8 minutes, breaking every traffic law in the city. I know. Clara hopped down from the container, landing with surprising grace. I heard you coming. I just didn't need to wait. She handed him the gun, grip first. Their fingers touched in the exchange, and something electric passed between them. Something that had nothing to do with crime or money or the complicated machinery of the underworld. The briefcase is intact, she said. The delivery point is compromised, obviously. But the contents are safe. The contents. Lucian shook his head slowly. You don't even know what you're carrying. I know it's worth $300,000. I know people are willing to kill for it. And I know, she paused, something flickering in her dark eyes. I know that whatever's in there, it's changed everything. Lucian looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not the waitress from the restaurant, not the desperate woman from the tenement apartment, but something else entirely. Something forged in the fire of this single impossible night. I think, he said slowly, I underestimated you. Most people do. Clara picked up the briefcase. That's my advantage. The combination was simple. 3 numbers that Lucian had whispered into her ear before she left the penthouse. Clara hadn't asked what they meant. Hadn't asked what the briefcase contained. She'd been too focused on survival on the mission, on proving that she was more than the sum of her circumstances. But now, standing in Lucian's office with the fog pressing against the windows like curious ghosts, she needed to know. Open it, Lucian said. He stood at the window, his back to her, giving her space, or perhaps protecting himself from what was about to be revealed. Clara entered the combination. The clasps clicked. The lid rose. Inside, nested in black velvet, was nothing dramatic. No gold bars. No weapons. No bundles of cash tied with rubber bands like in movies. Just a stack of documents, a handful of photographs, and 3 small flash drives labeled with dates. What is this? Lucian turned. In the dim light of his office, his face was unreadable. That is every secret this city has tried to bury. Every payoff, every cover-up, every body that was never found, and every deal that was never supposed to happen. Judges, senators, police commissioners, CEOs of companies whose buildings you walk past every day. Clara lifted one of the photographs. It showed 2 men shaking hands in what appeared to be a warehouse, one in an expensive suit, one in a police uniform. Both smiling. Both were unaware that their agreement was being documented. Why do you have this? Because information is power, Clara. Real power. The kind that doesn't need guns or threats or men on street corners. The kind that makes people cooperate because they're terrified of what you know. She looked at the documents. The names she saw made her head spin. People she'd seen on television. People whose decisions shaped the lives of millions. People who presumably had no idea that their darkest moments were currently sitting in a briefcase held by a waitress from a crumbling tenement. And now? She asked. Lucian crossed the room and stood before her. This close, she could see the toll this night had taken. The worry lines around his eyes, the tension in his jaw, and the exhaustion carefully concealed beneath the armor of his composure. Now, he said, that briefcase is yours. Clara blinked. What? You earned it. You survived an ambush. You exposed Bianca's betrayal. You proved that you're exactly what I hoped you would be, and more. He reached out, slowly, and closed the briefcase. The $300,000 is already in your account. But this is your real payment. Your future. Clara stared at the black leather and the silver clasps. Such an ordinary object to contain such extraordinary destruction. You're giving me leverage over the most powerful people in the city. I'm giving you choices. Lucian's voice dropped. You can destroy these files. Walk away. Use the money to save your mother, pay your debts, and build a quiet life somewhere no one knows your name. Or you can walk into the fog with those secrets in your hands. Become a player instead of a piece. Build something that's yours, power, influence, a place at tables where decisions are made. Clara thought about Elena, wasting away in her facility. About the apartment with its water-stained ceiling. About all the years of being invisible, overlooked, and underestimated. She thought about the woman she'd seen in the mirror tonight, the one who looked like power felt. And what about you? She asked. What do you want from me? Lucian smiled, a real smile, tired and hopeful and strangely vulnerable. I want to watch what you do next. That's all. Clara lifted the briefcase. It was heavier now, somehow. Heavier with possibility. She walked to the door. Paused. She looked back at the man who had seen something in her that she hadn't known existed. Thank you, she said, for the transformation. You transformed yourself, Clara. I just provided the costume. She smiled, a new smile for a new woman, and walked out into the fog. The city spread before her like a chessboard, and for the first time in her life, Clara Reyes wasn't a pawn. She was something else entirely. Something that everyone had underestimated. And that, she understood now, was the most dangerous thing to be. The end. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the amazing new stories coming soon. See you next time.